Welcome to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf, a space for women healing from betrayal to reconnect with their mind, body, and soul, one page at a time. I'm Rachel Strong-Smith, a betrayal trauma coach who's walked this path myself. In each episode, we'll explore books that speak to the heart of recovery, books that validate your experience, offer insight, and remind you that you're not alone. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about coming home to yourself. So, whether you're in the thick of survival or finding your way back to solid ground, pull up a chair. You're in the right place. Hi, welcome back to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf. We are still looking at Dr. Skinner's book, Treating Trauma from Sexual Betrayal. I think this might be our last section. We're going to wrap it up with this one, and I loved this section. I, of course, have not gone through the entire book. I've just pulled out pieces that I've liked to talk about. So, self-compassion, a hallmark of healing. Dr. Skinner starts with a quote, and he says, "If we can find ourselves in the midst of suffering and acknowledge the depth of our struggle, the heart begins to soften automatically. We stop trying to feel better and instead discover sympathy for ourselves. We start caring for ourselves because we're suffering." I love that. That is self-compassion. That is what we're looking for, is to acknowledge the suffering that we have experienced through this betrayal trauma. And it is suffering. It is pain. And we can acknowledge and hold space for that. Dr. Skinner talks about looking at what happens when betrayal trauma hits. Women lose their sense of identity. He talks about looking at a group of women that he was working with who had all experienced betrayal trauma. As he looked, it brought me to tears. I think it might again. I'm going to quote him. "I remember looking out at the faces in the audience, and I can still see the tears in some of the women's eyes. I knew they had forgotten the basic truth. They are of infinite worth and value regardless of life's experiences." And that is true. We forget, we lose ourselves in the survival of betrayal. He goes on to say, "They once felt energetic and were filled with hope for what life could offer. Now they were each seeking refuge from being with their own self. They hated the way they felt, their anger, their inability to focus, and the challenge they had just getting out of bed some days was overwhelming them. They had lost their sense of self. And yet there they were in the audience looking for refuge from the chaos of the world they were facing." And that is what it feels like. That is what's happening. It is a grief. It is not just the betrayal. It is the loss of self and the loss of identity that is at the heart of this betrayal trauma. Dr. Skinner goes on to talk about what we need as people, talking about that we need somebody who understands us, regardless of what we're going on. He then continues, and I love this. "While it's true that we all need someone, the important healing you will do will come from within you." And that is crucial. I think that even throughout the book, I've pointed out, let's focus on this individual healing. Here is where Dr. Skinner really hits home about it. Dr. Skinner also talks about how when we were children, we knew our infinite worth, and then life experiences happen. And maybe it was the betrayal, maybe it was even earlier. He talks about those life's experiences have a way of attacking that self-worth. It doesn't really matter where that self-worth is lost or where the trauma begins. What seems to matter most is that it happened. That is really critical. Sometimes we can get lost in spending a lot of time in the why or what happened or exactly how. And of course we want to visit that for context of our own reality. However, it doesn't make it so that it didn't happen. Sometimes the mind wants to find a solution so that we don't feel that loss, that pain. Quoting Dr. Skinner, The loss of self-worth is really a loss of self-compassion. When individuals forget who they really are, a person of infinite worth and value, they lose their true identity. Therefore, all authentic healing is a restoration of self-beliefs, a reestablishment of the sense of who you are and who you can become. Self-compassion is a requirement for true healing. So what is self-compassion? A lot of times we feel really guilty or weak. Sometimes our society focuses so much on being strong or holding it all together that we don't even discuss or explore our actual suffering. In the book, Self-Compassion by Dr. Kirsten Neff, Dr. Skinner quotes and suggests we stop to recognize our own suffering. We can't be moved by our own pain if we don't even acknowledge that it exists in the first place. That is so crucial. And a lot of times when that betrayal happens, we actually feel ashamed that it happened to us. And that blocks us from having compassion for ourselves that it happened to us and that we are suffering. It's really common to feel that shame, especially because the betrayal is sexual in nature. And that adds to the shame and adds to the secrecy. I remember early on, I knew about my husband's pornography addiction, but I did not have all of the context in my own healing. But I knew about it, and I remember there was a campaign asking for people to submit advertisements for pornography addiction. I remember a commercial from when I was younger, which will age me. It was a campaign for anti-drug. They showed an egg and said, "This is your brain." And then they cracked it on a frying pan and then fried it and said, "This is your brain on drugs." And so I made a campaign. I don't think I ever submitted it, but I thought it was pretty clever. It was, if I was on drugs, you'd show me what it did to my brain. If I was an alcoholic, you'd tell me to not drink and drive or something like that. I was going through the different drug campaigns and I said, but I'm addicted to pornography and no one has anything to say. And that to me really represented the isolation that I felt. And the truth is, I never submitted that. And I actually didn't tell anybody about the suffering that I was experiencing from my husband's sexual addiction. And so I was in isolation and I couldn't reach out to somebody because I still felt ashamed. I still felt like that wasn't my story to share. It was when I started to speak honestly about the betrayal that I could finally find some safe space to heal. That is an act of self-compassion, to reach out, to speak out loud with safe people. Dr. Skinner goes on to talk about barriers that prevent self-compassion. And this is real. We need to really acknowledge this is not just about, oh, have self-compassion, oh, do a little bubble bath and now you're fine. No. This is long-term commitment practice and really looking at those self-beliefs. He starts with the first barrier, which is negative self-talk. This is manifesting like nobody really likes you, you aren't as good as others, you deserve the bad things that happen to you, etc., etc. When we are in that space of betrayal, it is hard to understand what is actually happening. And sometimes it feels safer to bring it on our own selves. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. I talk about parts and internal family systems in my practice and with my clients. These are the parts that come and they're actually trying to protect us from feeling. Barrier number 2, Dr. Skinner talks about, is a lack of awareness. I am really big on this one because, again, in the name of protection, we have actually disassociated from our feelings or try to numb or to escape them because these feelings are so big. And so we really are gently trying to bring back that awareness to personal thoughts, feelings, and body sensations. I really appreciate that Dr. Skinner talks about those things. I focus on mind, body, and soul in my coaching practice, because those parts of ourselves are so critical to healing and becoming aware of what's happening in each of those areas. Dr. Skinner says, I often ask clients to slow down and pay attention to their inner self. Beautifully spoken. Slow down. Pay attention to your inner self. That is the key here, slowing down. The third barrier that Dr. Skinner talks about is treating oneself poorly. So this looks like not eating, not sleeping. I recognize the amount of stress and overwhelm and the cyclical nature of that. The less you sleep, the more stressed you are, and the more stressed you are, the less you sleep. It is not as easy as it sounds. When we hear, oh yeah, just take care of yourself, eat healthy, sleep well, meditate, that is a mountain to climb. When you are in this survival place, just taking care of your own basic needs can feel like an infinite obstacle. I just want to offer validation and empathy for that place and recognize when you're not able to take care of yourself, and just recognize what that feels like, and then see what tiny microscopic thing that you can add in. This is not a rehaul of your entire regime here. Just one little thing, like maybe I will take 5 minutes and breathe, or take 3 breaths, period. Little baby things. Oh, maybe I'll put in a little plug here. This is not any kind of paid advertising. I love the app Finch. It is a beautiful self-care app. Now, word of caution, don't put everything in there. On my self-care, it is get out of bed, drink water, step outside once, take a stretch break, and breathe 3 times. That's it. That's what I do. I can do that. Maybe it's just one thing. Maybe it is literally drink a sip of water. And if you did that for the day, that's it. That's all you got to do. We're not talking about liters. We're not talking about adding in every little thing that all the gurus say. No, take it slow. One baby step at a time. Okay, let's get to barrier 4. Unhealthy environment. This is so critical and it is overlooked. I'll quote Dr. Skinner. Some individuals have a difficult time experiencing self-compassion due to the negative environment in which they live. It is hard to believe in yourself if you are constantly being told that there is something wrong with you. While many people do not fully appreciate the importance of living in a safe environment, it may be one of the most single important elements behind long-term healing and recovery. Constant dripping weareth away the strongest stone. It's hard to stay strong when you are being barraged with negativity. And that is where boundaries come in. And again, I recognize that is a big word. We're not talking about the big stuff. We're talking about a little boundary, carving out a little space for yourself that is safe. I understand the cycle of abuse and gaslighting. And many people on the outside say, why don't you just leave? It's not that simple. And I recognize that. And if you are in a dangerous, toxic environment, this is not just, oh, step out of it and you'll be fine. It is dangerous. And if you find yourself needing that extra help of a women's shelter or somewhere safe to go, find that help, find the support that you need, and take it a little bit at a time. This is not big steps. These are tiny little pieces. Maybe it is literally just a corner in your bedroom. Maybe it's a closet. Maybe it's outside, somewhere that you can feel safe sometime. And then that can grow as you get more support. But this is not an overnight thing. And this does not happen because somebody tells you you need to leave or that this isn't safe. So why are you in there? That just brings more shame. This really is just about recognizing when there is unsafe, toxic, traumatic re-traumatization happening continually. Yeah, it makes sense that your body is still in survival mode. In betrayal, these trickle truths, these breadcrumbing, all of the behaviors that come from sexual addiction are coming with gaslighting, hiding, lying, manipulating. That's just all part of it. And those are the behaviors that create the lack of safety. And that environment, it continues to wear on your soul. It's about recognizing that. Dr. Skinner also gives some assessments about our level of self-compassion and some ideas of how to incorporate self-compassion. I like these. It talks about befriending painful emotions. That is a big one. Who wants to befriend those painful emotions? I mean, I can tell you I did everything I could to hustle myself away from those painful emotions. Unfortunately, they were still there. They were just buried really deep. This is where really getting good support is important, because there is a reason that we have been hiding from those painful emotions. The truth is, I wasn't ever going to be able to befriend my painful emotions on my own. I needed that coaching support where she created a safe space for me to explore those painful emotions. And little by little, we're not diving into the trauma soup. We're just taking a little bit at a time and processing them. I've got a whole backlog of these painful emotions. I still am processing them. I do it systematically and safely. It can be tempting to sometimes say, okay, I should dive into this and feel it all so I'm done. That will burn you out like crazy. Getting that support to help create space to feel your emotions. In my coaching practice, I offer brain spotting, which is an amazing tool to really get back into your body and let that thinking brain take a break while we go and explore what's happening in the body, again, in a safe way, with trauma-informed practices where we're not taking big old chunks. We're doing little at a time and metabolizing that energy and those emotions that have built up. So that is a wonderful tool that I found to help to process and befriend those feelings. Another one, Dr. Skinner talks about just watching the self-judgment. Again, this is gently acknowledging those self-judgments, not pushing them away. It can be tempting to say, oh, I have that judgment, just push it away. Maybe things like, I'm not lovable, I'm not pretty enough. Dr. Skinner had a client he described where she knew these weren't true, these judgments, but she felt them. And Dr. Skinner talks about observing them without judgment, seeing those thoughts, and they actually begin to soften a bit. This is where internal family systems, IFS, parts work can be really helpful, because again, there is a reason why these judgmental thoughts are there. They are actually trying to protect you from something. So sometimes there's another part that can come up that says, just get them out of here, don't talk about that. But what if we say, oh, you don't feel lovable? Tell me more about that. What does that feel like? What is that like for you? What are you scared of? When you say, I'm not lovable, what are you protecting me from? It's a beautiful unfolding and a gentle way to understand and learn about yourself. It can be tempting to push it all away, but we're just going to gently observe. All right, the last one is increase self-kindness. Kindness given to oneself is powerful healing. A lot of us have been taught that being kind to ourselves is somehow selfish or prideful. And those core beliefs are something to explore, to look at, to see with curiosity. What is that? Do I really believe that? What does self-care and love really look like? Thank you for exploring self-compassion with me. I hope that you take a little bit of this and just find one tiny, microscopic way to treat yourself well. It doesn't have to be big, and you don't have to change all the beliefs. We're just doing one step at a time. Thank you for being here. Bye. Thanks for joining me today on the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf. If something from this episode spoke to you, share it with a friend or come connect with me online. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Rachel Strong Smith. And if you want to go deeper, sign up for my email newsletter, where I share grounded support, personal insights, and practical tools to help you reconnect with yourself. Remember, healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral, and every step towards yourself matters. So, until next time, take gentle care.